Imagine one of the most famous murder cases in history was built on a story that wasn't completely true. For over 50 years, the world believed it understood the crimes of Charles Manson and the Manson family. The explanation seemed simple. A cult leader, a race war prophecy, and a series of brutal murders in Los Angeles. But what if that story was only part of the truth? What if the deeper story behind the Tate LaBlanca murders had been hidden for decades? Because one journalist spent 20 years chasing a mystery that the official case never explained. And what she discovers would raise questions about manipulation, psychological experiments, and one of the strangest figures of the 1960s. Today, we're diving into the book that tries to unravel that mystery. Hello, I'm Kishi, and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating book Chaos, The Truth Behind the Manson Murders. It's a book that raises some surprising questions about one of the most infamous stories in modern history. Let's explore together. So let me tell you something strange. This book starts with the author, Tom O'Neill, thinking he's just doing a quick magazine article about the Tate LaBlanca murders. Nothing huge, just a routine assignment. But the deeper he digs, the more everything starts to feel wrong. And that's where this whole story begins. Because most of us think we already know the story, in 1969, followers of Charles Manson broke into a house in Los Angeles and murdered actress Sharon Tate and several others. The official explanation? Manson convinced his followers that the murders would start a race war he called Helter Skelter. And that explanation was largely shaped by the prosecutor, Vincent Bugliosi. Bugliosi later wrote the famous book Helter Skelter, which became the definitive story of the case. Case closed. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. So Tom O'Neill gets hired to write an article about the anniversary of the murders. Pretty straightforward. He just needs to revisit the case and explain how the Manson family shocked America. But almost immediately, something odd happens. When O'Neill starts checking the official story, things don't line up. Little details, contradictions, missing information, and he keeps thinking, why are these things different from what the official record says? At first, he assumes it's just normal historical confusion. But then the questions start multiplying. One of the first strange things he notices is that Charles Manson should have been in prison long before the murders happened. This is important. Manson had been arrested multiple times throughout the 1960s. Drugs, theft, parole violations. By all accounts, he should have gone back to prison again and again. But he didn't. And for some reason, the system kept letting him go. Again and again and again. Even his parole officer admitted later that Manson violated parole repeatedly. And yet nothing happened. Think about that for a second. A career criminal running a cult, travelling around California with a group of followers, and the authorities just kept letting him walk. Then O'Neill discovers something even stranger. Some police departments were already aware of Manson and his group before the murders. They had reports, complaints, investigations, but somehow those investigations never seemed to go anywhere. In fact, in one instance, police raided a location connected to Manson and then just dropped the case. No real explanation, which raises the obvious question: why? As O'Neill keeps researching, he realises something else. Almost everything the public believes about the case comes from one man, Vincent Bugliosi. Bugliosi didn't just prosecute Manson. He also shaped the entire narrative of the murders. His book, Helter Skelter, became the best-selling true crime book of all time. Movies were made of it. Documentaries repeated it. Journalists relied on it. It became the official version of reality. But when O'Neill starts fact-checking Bugliosi's claims, he begins finding mistakes. Not just small ones, huge ones. Bugliosi's explanation was dramatic. According to him, Manson believed the Beatles were sending secret messages through their music, especially the song Helter Skelter from the Beatles in their White Album. Bugliosi said Manson believed a race war was coming, a war between black Americans and white Americans. And Manson thought the murders would help ignite that conflict. This theory helped convince the jury. It explained the violence. It explained the cult behaviour. It explained everything. But O'Neill starts wondering something uncomfortable. What if that explanation wasn't the whole truth? Because here's the weird part. Everyone who met Manson said he had an almost supernatural ability to manipulate people. He could break people down psychologically, convince them of bizarre ideas, make them abandon their families, give up their identities, even commit murder. And O'Neill begins asking himself, where did Manson learn to do this? Because he wasn't highly educated. He spent most of his life in prison. Yet somehow he had this deep understanding of psychological control. The kind that researchers and intelligence agencies has been studying during the Cold War. The deeper O'Neill looks, the more the case begins to feel unfinished. Witnesses who weren't questioned, evidence that disappeared, police investigations that stalled, government agencies that seemed strangely uninterested. And the biggest question of all, why did the official story shut down so many other possible explanations? Because every time someone raised a question about the case, they were told the same thing. Helter Skelter explains it. End of story. At this point in the chapter, something interesting happens. O'Neill realises that what she thought would be a 3-month magazine article might actually be something much bigger. Because every answer he finds creates 2 new questions. He begins interviewing people connected to the case. Former detectives, prosecutors, witnesses, and slowly he starts uncovering contradictions that had been buried for decades. That's when he realizes something that changed the entire direction of his investigation. The Manson story might not just be about a cult. It might be about something the public was never supposed to see. And this is where chapter 1 ends, with a realization. The official story of the Tate LeBlanc murders might not be wrong, but it might be incomplete. And if the story we've been told is incomplete, then the real question becomes, what was left out? And more importantly, why? So here's the question that kicks off the rest of the book. If Charles Manson was just a crazed cult leader, why did so many strange things happen around him? Why was he repeatedly released from jail? Why were investigations dropped? And why did the official narrative shut down so many other possibilities? Because as Tom O'Neill would eventually discover, the deeper he went into the case, the closer he got to something far more disturbing than anyone expected. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed exploring this book with me. If you did, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves uncovering the deeper stories behind books. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.